we're going. Okay, so welcome everyone. It is my pleasure, my divine pleasure, to have with me today someone that goes back in my early history. We were just talking about, wow, we did that together and we did that together. And oh my gosh, we have been on this path for a long time at each other's side. And I'll let Edie tell you how we got reconnected. We hadn't talked for, I don't know, a 3 years, maybe a couple years. And funny story how I got her on the show today. So Edie Weinstein, I'm just gonna let you take it away. Tell folks what you've been doing in Philadelphia mostly. That's where Edie and I know each other from. And so her Philadelphia story that runs close to my Philadelphia story.
Okay, well, I'm thrilled to be on the show, and we acknowledge that we got the purple and pink memo today. So we dressed like mine says love on the front. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Susan and I figured out that we met in 1988, and that was when my husband Michael and I started publishing a magazine called Visions. Had to do with holistic health, wellness, spirituality, environmental concerns, and peace and social justice. And it gave me the opportunity to launch my writing career. I did a lot of the interviews for the magazine with folks like Ram Dass, Bernie Siegel, Marianne Williamson, Wayne Dyer, Shirley MacLaine, Ben and Jerry. They were fun. And the interesting thing about them is that I did the interview over the phone, so I didn't know who was talking. I had to ask them to tell me. And we were really bummed that they didn't even send us discount coupons for ice cream. But, you know, that was a memorable issue. And I still have some of the back issues, 10 years worth. And we sold the magazine in May of 1988, and then Michael died in December of 88. He had been ill with hepatitis C. So a lot of the things that have happened in my life are the result of what I call the Hansel and Gretel breadcrumb trail. This event happened because I met this person who led me to this person in this experience. And being somebody who was as a dear friend of mine, Yvonne Kaye, calls a care sharer rather than a caregiver or a caretaker. You know, I helped Michael usher, you know, the last 6 years of his life as he was ill. So I became an advocate for organ donors, you know, people to become organ donors because he was waiting for a liver transplant. I became a bereavement counselor because of having been widowed. And I became an interfaith minister because Michael was the one in seminary through, it's called the New Seminary in New York City. And he was the one enrolled who had planned to become ordained. And the first year of his schooling, I studied casually along with him. I had no interest at all in pursuing that career path. And I would read to him because he couldn't concentrate to read. I would type his papers because he had neuropathy in his hands. What else? I would watch the videos. He was a correspondence student, so I couldn't, you know, he didn't go to the classes. That was kind of like a precursor to what we're doing now. And I hadn't had any clue why I was doing that. And then when he died, literally in the room at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital, when they turned off the life support, I heard the voice say, call the seminary and ask to finish what Michael started. Wow. And I went, whoa, okay, talk about a calling. You know how people say when they get into whatever faith tradition leadership role they're in, they call it a calling. So I said, all right, I'm going to pay attention to that. So a couple of days after his service, I called and asked to join the seminary. And his dean at the time, Diane Burke, said, you're welcome to join, you know, on 2 conditions. You are doing it not just for Michael, but you're doing it for yourself as well. And you can graduate with his class, but you've got to do both first and second year's work simultaneously, or just wait till the following year. I said, no, I'm going to do it all at once. So I started, I think, in January of 1999, and I graduated in June. And since then, I've married probably between 300 and 400 couples. I've done some funerals, baby blessings, and so on. So Michael's illness and subsequent death led me to become an interfaith minister. And back when I was in college, you know, this is another Susan story. When I was in graduate school at Rutgers in Camden, I did a project to pitch the opportunity for myself to get a scholarship. And the topic was counseling practitioners' use of touch as a therapeutic modality. And I can't believe all these years later, I could still remember the title of it. Because in the field of counseling, I'm a licensed social worker, by the way. In the field of counseling, it's supposed to be a no-no to touch our clients. And yet, sometimes talk isn't enough. So the paper was about some research that had to do with the necessity of touch for us as human beings, because we have skin hunger that's just as important to meet as food hunger. So in the paper, I explored how the different cultures looked at touch. And what I came to understand as a therapist is that there are times when it really is therapeutic to lean over and if someone's crying and say, "Can I hold your hand?" Or to hug them on the way out the door. So I hadn't realized back then that once again, I was planting seeds for something that I'm doing all these years later. I graduated in 1985 and we're talking now in 2021. In 2014, yeah, a workshop was created called Cuddle Party. I know I didn't create it. It was founded by Reed Mahalko and Marcia Baczynski, who were relationship coaches that lived in New York at the time, and now they're in California. I went to my first cuddle party when they were still in New York in 2015. And imagine this, a room with pillows and blankets looking very cozy and cuddly like a nest, and a whole bunch of people wearing PJs or sweats or yoga clothes. And there are some icebreaker exercises. So it's not just running in and jumping all over people. It's not that at all. It's a communication and boundary setting and nurturing touch by consent workshop for adults. So it starts out with the welcome circle, the icebreaker exercises, going over the rules of cuddling, and then what would be considered freestyle cuddling, which could be spooning, snuggling, massaging, and anything by consent, not sexual. It's an absolutely platonic, non-sexual workshop. And in order to touch anybody, even if you come there with somebody you know and love, you still have to ask permission. So if I was sitting next to you, I have to say, "Susan, can I put my hand on your shoulder?" And if you said no, then I wouldn't do it. And if there was silence, I wouldn't do it. It was only yes, you can do, if you say yes, then I would. So after my first workshop, actually before it was over, I thought, I want to bring this to Philadelphia because we didn't have it here at the time. So I invited Reed to come out that summer and he did 2 of them. And then I thought, I also want to be trained to do this. And they had just started the training. So I'm number 27 out of, I don't know if it's close to 200 by now, all over the world that are certified to teach this. And the only thing that can legitimately be called a cuddle party is a trademark workshop that Reed or Marcia or any people that they've trained to teach it, people have taken that class. So I've taught, I think I've led about more than 400 of those, including 3 of them that I co-facilitated with another workshop facilitator named Monique Darling at a conference in DC called Interfusion. And the last one we had over 600 people. So if you can imagine a room full of 600 cozy, cuddly people. Now, we don't know what's going to happen next year. Interfusion is scheduled for next January of 2022, and they're going to have to see what the CDC guidelines are like at the time before they consider having another cuddle party there. Now, enter a year ago, when the pandemic hit, and I have not done another cuddle party since last February. I think it was a Valentine's Day cuddle party. Not only have I not done a cuddle party, but I live alone and I haven't cuddled another human being except my amazing year and a few days, actually 13-month grandson. So he is my cuddle buddy. And I think that's something that's one of the biggest hardships for people is the lack of nurturing touch. So you as a sex educator know that sex isn't just about what goes on below the belly button. That it's a heart-to-heart connection, that it involves employing the single largest organ in our body and letting that get nurtured. So I encourage people to find ways to meet that need. If you live with an animal who is willing, cuddle with the animal. If you have trees near you, or you can go to a park, hug a tree. You can take care of yourself by hugging yourself, massaging yourself, feet, everything. When you take a shower, don't just wash to get clean. Feel the sensations of the water on you. Put lotion on. Put massage oil. And a lot of people in the before times, what I call it, would go to a hair salon to get their hair touched. And for a year, some people didn't. And my hair has grown. It's now down to here. So I don't have a desire to go to the salon for that purpose, but I started getting pedicures again. And, the salon that I go to, the nail salon that I go to is really safety conscious, that you have to, they only limit the number of people that go in there. You have to use hand sanitizer. They have partitions between the chairs. Everybody's wearing a mask, and it felt so good. Not just because my toes were looking kind of yucky, but it felt really good to get massaged. So I think I've done it 3 times in the last year, partly for that purpose, is to get those touch needs met.
Just for touch. Yeah, and hairdressers and salon folks will say that they feel people come in, some of the elderly people come in just so they can be touched.
Oh, yeah.
They know that with their clients, they can sense it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the fun thing is that, was it your first cuddle party at my condo, and the news people were there and tell them what we
wasn't my first, but it was in the first year or so that I did it. And I don't think you were there. You were generous enough and trusting enough to let me bring a whole bunch of strangers into your house, including the TV news. It was might have been like CBS or NBC. It was a local news affiliate that came out, and there might have been 20, 25 people there. Now, when we do what are called media-friendly cuddle parties, we have to get consent of everybody there. They have to know in advance that they may end up on TV or in a newspaper. So, because confidentiality is such a big part of cuddle party, that they have to sign a waiver that says we're aware that the media is here. So the reporter came out. I don't remember whether she was in her PJs. I encouraged that, though. I encouraged her to dress the part. And it was a beautiful workshop. The next day, it's on the news that night, I think, or the following night. The next day, it ends up on Good Morning Yahoo, like on the Yahoo front page. Then Stephen Colbert gets a hold of it. Now, this was in the days before he was in his persona, Stephen Colbert, who as a real person is pretty liberal, pretty open-minded, and in the TV persona, he was kind of judgmental. So he had these 2 ways of critiquing certain cultural experiences or icons. He either called it a thumbs up or a wag of the finger. Guess which one he gave us? It was a wag of the finger. Now, I knew in advance it was going to be on. His producer had contacted me, and I was actually over at a friend's house watching it with her, and it came on, and I just started, my face just fell, and I started crying a little bit. And then I called Reed, who, again, one of the founders of Cuddle Party, and his response was, "Darling, any publicity is good publicity."
That's right.
Stephen called it something like an orgy for the socially inept. And I was horrified because I felt very protective of the attendees at my cuddle parties. And I thought, oh, he's disparaging them. And I said, all right, I'm going to do something about this. So I sent an email the next day, and I said, as a responsible journalist, you really should know what you're talking about. I invite you to bring your PJ clad butt to one of my cuddle parties so you can experience it firsthand. He never came.
Yeah.
So it would have been nice, but it was online for a little while, and I can't even find it anymore. They must have taken it down.
Wow.
But that was memorable. That was a memorable experience.
And so that had to be like 2006.
No. Cuddle Party wasn't even around then. It was founded. No, you're right. I'm sorry. It was I made it wrong. It wasn't 2014. It was 2004 when it started. I got trained certified in 2005. So yeah, you're right. It might have been 2006.
Yeah,
So,
because
yeah.
I was only in the condo till I think 2008. So I knew it was in that
Right.
window.
Yeah. So you're right. It was then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what a history. Who was your
Oh yeah.
favorite person that you interviewed?
Well, you know who the answer is going to be. The Dalai Lama. What the heck? Yeah. Yeah.
Tell
That
us about
story. Yeah, that story was 20 years in the making, that interview. I had interviewed, some of the other people that I had mentioned, 10 years worth of notables in the various fields that have to do with transformation, social justice, holistic health, a whole bunch of, what would have been called New Age spirituality back then. And I had wanted to interview His Holiness. And I wasn't sure how to get my foot in the door. So I did what I do for a lot of things that I've created, is that I set the intention. I let people know that I was going to be doing this, and everybody, I have a whole bunch of yay sayers in my life, very few naysayers. Everybody said, we know you're going to do this someday. We're cheering you on. And then somebody suggested writing questions as if I'd be interviewing him the next day. So I did that. Then I created vision boards with his picture on it. And somebody says, well, why don't you cut out a picture of yourself and put it next to his so you're in proximity? I said, okay, do that. Then I was asked to help promote an event at Rutgers Stadium in New Brunswick where His Holiness was speaking. And I'm a kind of casual PR goddess is what I call myself. And I spread the word. I'm a buzz agent. I spread the word about things that I believe in. So I said, sure, I'd be glad to. And by the way, is he granting interviews? No, he's not granting it. All right, I'll do it anyway. So I go to Rutgers Stadium where there were like 20,000 people in the stands. And I walked around with my tape recorder interviewing them. Not all 20,000, of course, maybe half a dozen. And I asked them what they were doing there and what he meant to them. And I don't even remember where it got published. On the way out, they gave us each postcards with his picture on it. And I taped it to the dashboard of my car. So I had him in the car with me. I still do. It's pretty threadbare in the picture because it's survived, I think, 3 cars since then. And then I had the vision board. So he was with me in my house. He was with me in my car. He was with me in my thoughts. And anytime somebody would mention him, I'd say, okay, yes, I'm going to be interviewing him. So fast forward to 2008, and my friend Greg Schultz, who is from this area, an American-born Buddhist, is very much involved with the Tibetan rights movement. And he's met His Holiness before. And he was charged with he's the event producer, not charged as in criminally charged, but he was given the assignment of being the event producer when His Holiness came to Philadelphia in July of 2008. And I said, what do you think the possibilities are? He says, well, I don't know, but I'll put in a good word for you. Would you be willing to help promote it? And I said, of course. So as the date got closer, he said, it's kind of like the kids' game. You're getting warmer. You're getting warmer. He said, I can't promise, but it's looking good. So in early July of 2008, I'm at the Exponential Music Festival, which is sponsored by WXPN, my favorite radio station. And if folks are interested in it, it's 88.5 FM on the radio or xpn.org. So I was standing there with 2 friends. One of them is a photographer. Greg calls me and I answer the phone and he says, are you sitting down? I said, should I be? And he said, yes, take off July 16th and 17th. You got the interview. And by the way, you're the only journalist in Philadelphia that he's granting an interview for. I screamed in the phone, wow! And my photographer friend snapped the picture. I don't have the screen. I have the pre-screen picture though. And he said, I'll get back to you tomorrow with the details. And of course, I was walking on clouds at the moment. Excuse me. So the next day he calls me and he says, you still have the interview, but they want somebody from the Philadelphia Inquirer on board too. And you don't think I said, nah, if I can't have an exclusive, I don't want it. And he told me the man's name, and he had been David O'Reilly was his name, and he had been the religion columnist for the Inquirer, and I'd read his stuff for years. So the day before the interview, we went to this Buddhist temple in North Philly where His Holiness was speaking. And David and I looked at each other and we looked at the other journalists. And I said, they don't know that tomorrow at this time, we're going to be with His Holiness. And he said, I got a new suit for the occasion. I said, I got a new dress for the occasion. Yep. So he was speaking at the Kimmel Center that day after the Buddhist temple. And it was his birthday a few weeks before. And I think he had turned 75 that year. And somebody wheeled in this huge cake, like, enough to feed everybody in the auditorium. And we sang happy birthday. And I'm guessing that in Tibet, there isn't the blowing out the candles ritual, because he kept the candle lit and started cutting the cake. And we kept saying, blow out the candle, which I think is kind of a bizarre ritual, because, here you are blowing out a candle, spitting on the cake that other people are going to eat, But I'm thinking now in the time of COVID, that ritual may have gone by the wayside. So anyway, he cut the cake. And I got the last piece. I was waiting, I was talking to people. And then I took the cake and went into the lobby where I called my mother, who was living in Florida at the time. My father had died that April, so a few months before. And I said, Mom, guess what we're doing? We're eating the Dalai Lama's birthday cake. It felt so joyful to be able to share that with my mother, because my parents were my most ardent cheerleaders. So I'm thinking also that my father pulled some strings upstairs. He grew up in South Philly, and he knew everybody. So I'm thinking he did some of that up in heaven too. So the next day, they wouldn't even tell us where he was staying until the day before. I said, do you think we're going to tell anybody? It was, at the Four Seasons in Philly. So when I told the story to another friend, she said, the Dalai Lama that's our tagline, the Dalai Lama stays at the Four Seasons. I said, where do you think he's going to stay? Like on a mat? She said, on a mat on the floor somewhere. No. So anyway, I was working at a psychiatric hospital at the time, and I had taken the morning off to write the article. It was for the Doylestown Intelligencer, a Bucks County PA paper. And I walked in there, heart pounding, and I thought I had imposter syndrome. Like, what if I forget what I'm going to ask? What if I can't speak? Just all these random thoughts. And I said, look, you would not have been given this opportunity if you hadn't earned it. And it was 20 years in the making. So just enjoy it. Okay, shut up, monkey mind. Just enjoy it. So I walked, and beforehand, David and I had collaborated. We had met, and I said, what if, he was going to give us each 15 minutes. I said, what if in the spirit of cooperation, we go in together and we get a whole half hour? Yeah. We'll each record the other person's information, and then each of us had a photographer that came in. So I walked in, and he's at the other end of the room, and I start crying. And he comes over, and there's a ritual that you do when you meet him. It's a white silk scarf called a kata. You wear it around your neck. You take it, hold it in namaste pose. He takes it, blesses it, puts it around your shoulders, and then he hugged me. And it was like the floor went, swallowed me up. And the way that I joked about it afterwards was like when you're in middle school, junior high school, and the person that you have a crush on kisses you on the cheek, and you think, I'll never wash again. And what I say is, all these years later, I wash every day. I wash my face. But he gave us 45 minutes, and I did the interview. And then I had to go back to work at the hospital. And I think a lot of my patients knew that I was doing this too. And when I walked in there, I thought, okay, I have to shift gears. And one of the docs, one of the psychiatrists there says, you look like you've been laminated. And they wanted to touch me since I had been in the presence of His Holiness, and he had actually hugged me. So people, some of my coworkers were saying, can I, we're kind of rubbing up against my, can I touch? So the next day, that day, I had to come home from work and then write the article. My deadline was 9 o'clock that night. So I was going back and forth with my editor, making changes. And finally, I just, like at midnight was the last edit. I went to bed, woke up at like 4 a.m, and I looked online. It wasn't online yet. So I called the local Wawa. And for those of you not in the Philly area, Wawa is like a 7-Eleven convenience store. But if you live in the Philly area, you know what Wawa is. I called and I said, is today's Intel out? Yeah, it's out. Is there a cover story on the Dalai Lama? Yeah, it's here. So in my PJs, jumped in the car and ran over there. And when I looked at the article, my heart sank. I went, this is not the interview that I wrote. This is not the article that I wrote.
Oh,
And it wasn't even, didn't even take up much of the front page. It's the feature was about backyard wrestling, and it was called something like WrestleManiacs, something like that. Hello, we have company. Look at you. Hi.
I can't stop him, so he's
It's
just
okay.
going to join
That's
us.
all right. You came to listen. Here you
He
go.
wants to be close to the Dalai Lama too.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that was the feature, one column, and the title was "The Dalai Lama Urges Nurturing." So I cried, and I called this friend of mine out in California who was, a night owl anyway, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning there, and he said, "Excuse my language." Screw, he didn't say screw, he used the F word. The article, "You got to interview the Dalai Lama, you got to live your dream." So since then, I've written different versions of it, repurposed it. So it is online now. People want to read it. Edie Weinstein, Dalai Lama interview, and you'll be able to find it.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah. So every time I see him on television, on a YouTube video, I think that's my buddy. I have and he's a genuine person, a really genuine, not hands off, arm's length kind of person.
Yeah.
So long may he live.
What a testimony to law of attraction and staying the course and believing and trusting.
Exactly.
Really, what a testimony for the rest of us to learn from. If you stick to it, we try something for a week and say, well, that didn't work.
Right.
20 years,
20
you
years,
stood in, this is going to happen.
Yep. And I can remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah. Well, you know how it is sometimes when we touch our clients and it's something that they'll never forget, just that touch on the cheek, or when we do the sensate focus and we touch their hands and they look at their hands and they look at me and they look at their hands and they look at me. I know something has been arisen or born in them that they can never go back from. Right. Just like you have something now you can never go back from.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like, like when you see something, you can't unsee it. The other thing that I do that I did a year ago that has to do with touch is a group that I created called HugMobsters Armed with Love. So even if the touch by consent is from somebody that you don't know, that you would consider a stranger, it's still nurturing. In 2014, February, Valentine's Day weekend, I went to 30th Street Station in Philly with a group of friends. That's a big train station. And we had a free hugs flash mob. And I chose Valentine's Day weekend because I wanted people to understand that Valentine's Day isn't just for couples, and it isn't just one day of the year, it's every day. So at noon, we unleashed ourselves on 30th Street Station, and a friend is a musician, Ron Chelsvig, and he walked around playing "Give a Little Bit," give a little bit of your life to me. That one, and you can actually find that video too. That's I don't know what it's listed under, but Edie Weinstein, HugMobsters, Valentine's Day weekend, Philadelphia, whatever references, but it's on there too. And within the 1 hour period that we did this, we estimate that there were a dozen of us that were there. We estimated we hugged about 200 people.
That's awesome.
And the most, no pun intended, touching aspect of it was we were approached by a man who was an Iraq War vet, and he was the only survivor of his platoon, and he had survivor's guilt. And he said, I thought about ending my life until I met you people. Can I join you? So of course, we cried, we gave him a sign, and he was off to the races too. And my thought was how hugs save lives.
Yeah.
So I hadn't realized how, again, I don't even know what the right word is, but how telling that was, because 5 months later, at the age of 55, I had a heart attack. I was on my way home from the gym, and the doctors put in a stent, and I had to start cardiac rehab a couple weeks later. And I thought, as part of my cardiac rehab, why don't I walk through Doylestown, which is a little town near me, and combine the hugging with the walking. And friends had started calling us hug mobsters, hug mob, flash mob. And I said, oh, mobsters, mafia, guns, drugs, I don't think so. So I added the tagline, armed with love. One of our HugMobsters created a logo, a little heart with hands, and then we made T-shirts. And another friend who is a mover and shaker in the Doylestown area, Kimberly Canberra, had commissioned a local artist to create signs for us, for me. It was a birthday present for me. So I had 2 signs, and they both have had a lot of road wear. So I haven't replaced them, but I took I took the logo and laminated it, and I carry that around, and it's portable. So since 2014, I've hugged all throughout the United States and Canada, and then in 2018, another seed planting, law of attraction trip to Ireland. I have my way across Ireland. So I haven't done any actual free hugs events since last February or March, but I've started doing virtual free hugs where I'll walk around with a sign and ask people if they'd like a virtual hug. And they said, well, what's that? And I said, well, you put your arms around yourself. I put my arms around myself, and we can imagine that we're hugging. And then I'd like you to visualize the last person you hug, the last hug you had with somebody you haven't hugged in a while, and the first hug that you're going to have once we're free to do that safely. And people's faces light up. And it's actually less intimidating than it would be if I were to ask them if they would like a real, physical hug. In the beginning of the pandemic, I still have intense dreams, but I had one really powerful dream where people could hug, but they hugged back to back or back to front, like spooning. They weren't yet able to hug face to face. Yeah. So I was vaccinated. I got my second vaccine a little more than 8.5 weeks ago now. And I ran into a friend who had also been vaccinated. We were outside, we both had masks on, and we hugged, and boy, did that feel good. So I'm really looking forward to a time when we can safely do that again. I'm looking forward to when I can hug you.
We need to start National Hug Day. Mm-hmm. How do we do that?
Well, there probably is a National Hug Day, but we need to call it something else. I don't know how to, what I did, again, when the pandemic started, is that I created a Facebook post where I asked people to do that too. That if they lived with people, to hug them if they were willing, or animals, or if not, have virtual hugs, heart hugs, where you're sending out love beams, if you want to call it, like in E.T. If you remember what he did. So I don't know how to, I know other people that do free hugs in other areas of the world. So that might be a really, really good thing. But I am looking forward to a time when we're not questioning, is it safe? It was just one of the most appalling things for me at the beginning of the pandemic was, oh my God, we're not going to be able to touch. What if I can never do cuddle party again? What if I can never